Welcome back. In this video, we're going to explore what is AI and how it's more than generative AI. But first, what is generative AI, right? That's the smallest subdomain of AI. So first, AI here is a box. Think of it like that. AI is the box, and there's a lot of AI inside. Lots of goodies inside that box. But it's not the whole box. And that's the first misconception. When people are talking to ChatGPT and these different kinds of chatbots, and now with Copilot, there's Copilot Chat, but there's also Copilot built into all of the Microsoft 365 applications. That's generative AI. So everyone is using generative AI in that way. However, there are many types of AI that we're interacting with that are not chatbots. So if you think about it, you're probably going to come up with some different use cases. And we'll get into that in just a minute. But if you thought that the chatbots, because they came on the scene and they're talking like humans, that's the only thing that AI is, well, that's the first thing that we need to clear up. It's more than just that. All right, so then we have machine learning. So machine learning is the first subdomain of AI. This is where the software learns from data. Okay, so that's the first thing. It learns by itself. And that's where the term artificial intelligence comes from. But it learns from data. And also here, the same thing. This one, deep learning, learns from data. But what's the difference? Well, deep learning is software that's modeled after the brain. And machine learning uses statistical algorithms to learn data, to learn from data. So first things first, you don't really need to memorize all of this stuff at all. In fact, I'm going to make it very simple when we start talking about the different types of software. And we'll do that by using a hot dog and a hamburger and make predictions when we show it to an AI. That's the easiest way to understand how it works. And we'll be using deep learning for that. So you can think of machine learning as statistical learning and deep learning as software modeled after the human brain. It uses neural networks. And by neural networks, we're just saying that the brain has neurons and they're all connected, and that's a neural network. Everybody has one. So that's not a foreign thing. However, in deep learning, we use code to create artificial neurons and then hook them up together, and it works really well. And that's what powers things like ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot. So they're built from deep learning. And that's why all of those tools are called generative AI. The easiest way to think of that is, well, it's generating text. That's it. It's some kind of AI that generates stuff. It can create text, images, code, and much more. But the important part here is that chatbots are just one slice of the pie. They're not the whole thing. And a lot of people think that, well, chatbots, that's AI. So now you know that we're thinking bigger than just chatbots, which is generative AI. Now let's take a moment to think about AI in everyday situations. So in certain cases, if you open up your phone and you have the facial recognition instead of a password set up, that's facial recognition. If you watch movies, well, they have facial recognition to catch criminals. But it's also used in computer vision, where the car can identify not just faces, but other cars, people, trees, and even signs. These two are deep learning. So deep learning is not just chatbots, but it's also facial recognition, computer vision, and here we use deep learning as well, but also machine learning. It's a combination. So you can use more than one type because the robot is using deep learning to see, but maybe it's using machine learning in different parts of how it moves the motors. And when we're thinking about intelligent document processing, we could be using generative AI, deep learning, and machine learning all together. However, with fraud detection, which is often used in banks, they've been using machine learning for quite some time to find outliers, things that stand out. And that's one way that they find fraud amongst all of the transactions, millions of transactions. Using machine learning, it's great at finding these patterns. And you just give it all this data and it learns from that data and it says, look at these 10 transactions. I think that there is some kind of fraud here. So it can be very powerful and very helpful. But as you see, none of these are chatbots. So AI can be many different kinds of things. So AI is machine learning, deep learning, and generative AI. However, this is a simplified list, and the idea here is not to go further than this, just to get a general idea that AI is many different types. And here is where we try to make everything super simple. We're just thinking about 3 types of software. Software 1.0, software 2.0, that applies to these two, and then finally software 3.0. And we're going to go through each one of these, and I'm going to show you hands-on how it works. It's pretty simple. For example, software 1.0 is coding, also known as programming. So it's traditional programming. So everything that you've ever known about programming, whether you see a movie where they're hacking into something, or you see a bank teller entering information, or you're using any application on Microsoft, that is all traditional programming. Only recently have they started to use machine learning and deep learning and generative AI. That's not 1.0. 1.0 is traditional programming, and I promise I will make it super, super simple. And we're not learning programming, so that's good news. So software 1.0 is basically just rules. If X, then Y. So you could also say, if the ticket is older than 24 hours, escalate. Or if your seatbelt's not plugged in, then the light goes off. So things like that. Very, very if X, then Y kind of thing. And that's just really rules. And sometimes we use analytics, but still that's all software 1.0. Software 2.0 spans classic machine learning and deep learning. So here we have given past tickets predict the priority 1 through 5. So it learns from the data. And that's all you really need to know. And when we're thinking about software 2.0, we're doing the same exact thing. We're still learning from data, but it reads the email body and detects some kind of sentiment analysis, some kind of intent. Oh, this email is about a job promotion. So it figures out that intent. What is the goal of that? And that's just a different kind of learning. But as we know here, we're using algorithms, and here we're using neurons. So software modeled after the brain. That's not the important part. All you really need to know is that if the software learns from data, it's 2.0, even if it's machine learning or deep learning. So we know that software 1.0 is traditional programming, and software 2.0 is some kind of machine learning or deep learning. And then now we have software 3.0, and these are chatbots. And here I have something that says LLMs, and that stands for large language models. You don't need to know that as well, but now you know what it means. If you ever see that, all it means is a chatbot. The large means that it was trained on a large chunk of the internet, so large data, and it's using language primarily, well, text on the internet, and it's a model. Traditionally and normally, deep learning model. And deep learning works great with large data and is great at language, and well, that's the type of model that it is, a large language model, but is very, very specific, so it fits under the software 3.0 or generative AI. So here, summarize this thread for the next agent, or draft a welcome email. These are things that you type into a chatbot, and it's great at that. So now we know that that's software 3.0. But the most important thing for generative AI is that you use plain language. So software 1.0, you have to learn Python or JavaScript or some kind of programming language. Software 2.0, you're also using like Python or some kind of a programming language to set up the model, but then you run that model or train it, and then it just goes and learns on its own, and then you can deploy it. So that's still pretty complicated, right? Software 1.0 and 2.0. A lot of coding and different kinds of objective. One uses rules, the other one, it learns on its own. So that's why it's called AI. But the third one, you type in English, summarize this email, and then it just does it. So it's a kind of programming, but it's the best kind because that means that we can all program without knowing any programming languages. And as promised, in the next video, we're going to go through each type of software, and I'm going to explain exactly what it is using hands-on examples. See you in that next video.